大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火国大王. Today, I want to talk to you yet again about the New York Times. It is shocking to me how far this organization can fall. When I was young, I thought the New York Times was a big deal. They were fact-based and logical and representing truth somehow. And after I moved to China, I started to realize that they're far from that. Honestly, I can't tell if it's I've changed or they've changed, but the reporting that they do is so biased and just totally dismiss facts and makes up their own information. It's crazy to me at this point. So today I just want to quickly go through yet another ridiculous release that they made. I don't know if you're aware or not, but I've started to be a little bit more active on Twitter recently, even though I don't really like the platform. And I made a post that basically said, New York Times, you can't just keep making stuff up anymore. I'm gonna actually debunk your latest piece of propaganda garbage. And so this is that video. So they released this strange webpage that says how the virus got out. The most extensive travel restrictions to stop an outbreak in human history haven't been enough. We analyzed the movements of hundreds of millions of people to show why. Well, this sounds totally fine. This sounds like it's going to be analytical and objective. Great. So nothing to complain about here so far. Then as you scroll down, it says, it seems simple. Stop travel, stop the virus from spreading around the world. Already it's getting a little bit weird because they're almost saying like, oh, it should be easy. You just stop travel and stop the virus from spreading around the world. When they are one of the biggest sources of whining and complaining about China stopping travel and locking down the country. They are the ones who have been complaining almost the most out of anybody. And here they're like, it should just be simple. I mean, just lock it down, right? And so on this slide, you'll notice that it says, many of the first known cases clustered around a seafood market in Wuhan, China, a city of 11 million and a transportation hub. This is a very, very interesting slide. Most people will just fly right past this one, but this one clearly shows what they're doing. So you'll notice it doesn't say that the virus or the infection came from this market because they know that it didn't. Every news agency by now has realized the fact that months have gone by since anyone actually believed that the market was the source of the outbreak. That's not the case. The earliest cases we know about go back as far as December 1st, and even hypothetically as far back as middle of November. None of those cases have anything to do with this market. So from the facts that we have now, it is impossible that this market is the origin of the virus. That's based on factual evidence, not on conjecture. So they know that. And yet the way that they say this is many of the first known cases clustered around a seafood market in Wuhan. They know that almost everyone who reads this will still think that the market is where this started. So this is a very misleading way to say it so that they can say, oh, we're not lying because, yep, many of the first known cases clustered around a seafood market. Done. What they're doing here is they're trying to maintain their own sense of, well, we told the truth, but at the same time twisting everything so that their rabid followers will still believe the narrative that they've eaten up like complete ignorant idiots. And also you'll notice on the map, it shows the seafood market and it shows a subway station. And the idea here is to make you feel like, oh, everybody from the market's getting on the subway station and that's how it all begins. When again, it didn't start at the market. So likely this map should have been inversed and the red thing should have been the subway station. That's the scary thing because somehow the virus got to this market and it didn't just magically appear. And that's again, based on the facts that we can verify. Then it gets even weirder as it says 4 cases grew to dozens by the end of December. They're being intentionally vague about the dates here, and you'll see why later. Doctors knew only that the sick people had viral pneumonia that did not respond to the usual treatments. This is why they're not putting the dates on this slide. We know that a virus was uploaded from Wuhan, China, December 23rd. And we know that on December 27th, just 4 days later, it was reported to the hospital that these cases may be pneumonia of an unknown source. Now, why are these dates so important? Because to diagnose pneumonia of an unknown source, you have to give them antibiotics and they have to not respond for 3 to 5 days, the average being 4, which is exactly how long it took between them sending the virus and going, hey, something's a little weird here, and them reporting to the hospital, no, seriously, something's really going on. This is from an unknown source. 4 days, which is exactly standard medical procedure. They don't mention any of that here. They just say 4 cases grew to dozens by the end of December. By the end of December, what they mean here is, by the time it was reported, there were more cases than what the doctors knew about. Correct. That's how all viruses work everywhere in the world. There's never been a time where an outbreak was one person went to a hospital and said, hey, I feel sick. They tested, found a virus. He was the only person that had it, shut down, done. Doesn't exist. And then here it says the true size of the outbreak was much larger. And they don't make it clear that while that may be true, nobody realized that at the time. All they knew is there are people here in this hospital, in that room, that have pneumonia that seems to be from an unknown cause. It's important to remember this number, 1,000 cases, because now they're going to talk about what they think China should have done with these 40 cases or 20 cases, or how they're describing it, 1,000 cases that people didn't know about. Here they admit that even a perfect response may not have contained the spread. And look at this paragraph. Oh, this is beautiful. But Chinese officials did not alert the public to the risks in December. Really? Am I just crazy, or does this video say December on it? This is CCTV telling the entire country that a strange pneumonia-like disease was found in Wuhan. They did that twice the same day. The Wuhan Health Commission released a public statement in December. Again, these are the facts that we can verify. Within 4 days of sending the virus to get analyzed, they had declared that this seemed to be from an unknown source. That is totally standard timeline. Within 4 days of that, they had started quarantining people. They had notified the WHO. They closed down the market. They issued warnings to the hospitals. And they made at least 3 public announcements about it, including 2 that were on national television. And then here it says, it wasn't until December 31st that they alerted the WHO and released a statement. It wasn't until the 31st. That's 4 days later. Name me one outbreak ever in the history of humankind where doctors thought something was going on, and within 4 days, the WHO was alerted, quarantine had started, and all that other stuff had happened. One. Name me just one of them. One. Another way to put this that wouldn't have seemed so scary is, it wasn't until 4 days later that they notified the WHO. That doesn't sound as scary, does it? So then it's just talking about how people moved around, and they seem to be indicating here that, like, oh, why didn't China just lock down all travel the moment that they had 7 people who were sick with something? This is the same ridiculous argument that very ignorant people make, and it's shocking to see the New York Times make this argument. If you find 4 cases of even the most spreadable disease in the world imaginable with an R0 of 25, you still wouldn't shut down the entire country. It's ridiculous. What are you talking about? And they just keep going on about this. At least 175,000 people left Wuhan in just 1 day, we found. As I've said several times, there's no precedence nor reason to shut down Wuhan travel. None. At this point, they still weren't exactly sure what was going on. You only restrict those freedoms if you have overwhelming evidence that it is transmissible, that it is spreading, and that things are getting worse. As of this point that you're saying January 1st, the next day, this is the day they were closing down the market. You really think they should have shut down the entire city? This is crazy talk. What are you comparing this to? Where is this country that you know of that just locked everything down? Oh, maybe you're thinking of North Korea. Is that what you're saying every country should do? I mean, the United States still doesn't have as much restrictions on it as China had by this point in your timeline. And they have thousands and thousands and thousands of known confirmed cases. And according to Johns Hopkins, the number is probably only 2% of the real actual amount of cases in America. And even they haven't locked down as much as China was locked down at this point. Here, they say that human-to-human transmission was acknowledged on January 21st. Wrong. Actually, it was acknowledged on January 15th, as I put in my timeline. I mean, you are the New York Times, right? I'm just literally a guy in an apartment. And even I know more about this than you do. How is this possible? Then it says that they locked down Wuhan and travel across China nearly stopped. And then you complained about it a lot. And this is another very strange thing that China blamers do. They say stuff like this: as the outbreak moved across China in early January, international travel continued as normal. As if it's the fault of China that international travel happens. If you're another country and you see this happening and you don't want Chinese people to travel to your country, you don't have to allow them. That's up to you. Why is it up to China to decide for the entire world what they are willing to accept into their country? This doesn't make any sense, and yet you're making it seem like, oh, there's still international travel. Thousands of people flew out of Wuhan to cities around the world. Cities which, by the way, knew that this infection was happening and didn't stop the traffic. And then it says over 900 people went to New York every month on average based on recent trends. Wow, that's not a lot. That's like 20 a day, and that's nothing. And the thing is, if it were something, if it was a big deal, then why didn't you stop them? It's not, again, it's not up to another country to stop sending people to you. It's up to you to stop other countries from sending their people to you. This is what borders are. If you don't want Mexicans in your country, for example, and you let them in via airplane and they go and they legally do everything, it's not Mexico's fault that they came. It's your fault. And then it goes on with this ridiculous line of logic. It says, in mid-January, a 61-year-old woman who traveled from Wuhan to Bangkok, despite having a fever, headache, and sore throat, was the first known case outside of China. Gosh, Thailand, why did you let someone through your screening? If you see a video of someone walking through the checks in America with no one caring that they look sick, do you think, oh, China? It's your responsibility to protect your own borders and your own citizens by checking people who come in. This is standard in every airport. I mean, what are you talking about? And then here they say 85% of infected travelers went undetected, researchers believe, but they were still contagious. Okay, well, why didn't you detect them? I mean, who are you talking to here? And then this is another really tricky paragraph. It says, it was only at the end of January that Wuhan was placed under a lockdown and airlines started canceling flights. By January 31st, listen to how they say this. By January 31st, when the United States announced it would shut down entry from China for non-Americans, travel out of Wuhan had basically stopped. Oh, wow. So they were following the United States lead, huh? In January 31st. Wow. I guess the United States did something and then China just copied them. These copiers. Wait, by January 31st. Oh, you mean on January 23rd? Okay, wait, so another way to say this is, it took the United States an extremely long amount of time to stop entry from China. Even longer than it took China to shut down Wuhan. Or, let me put it more clearly. China took extreme action against the outbreak in Wuhan. Okay, I mean, why didn't you just write it that way? Because the way that you're writing it makes it seem like the United States ran in with their leadership and did something, and then, oh, by that time, China had kind of done something or whatever. It was only by the end of January. Well, I mean, 0 places in the United States to this day, which have way more cases than Wuhan had at this time. 0 of those places are locked down. So again, why are you picking on China? They actually did something about it. When is the United States going to actually lock down all of the city. Not hold signs that say, please don't go outside, guys. Literally lock it down like China did. And then look at this part. By March 1st, thousands of cases were reported in Italy, Iran, and South Korea. China was no longer the main driver of the outbreak. And did those places act slower or faster than China? Did they lock everything down slower or faster, or they haven't locked it down? And then here, they're so confused. Here, it basically says that, it turns out that testing, tracing, and isolating patients and quarantine actually did reduce the cases. So how come no one else is doing it and you're attacking one of the only countries that actually did do it? And then they basically go on their normal thing of attacking Trump, saying that tests have lagged. That's one way to put it. And of course that he apparently said, the virus will not have a chance against us, which is just hubris. And so that's pretty much it. If you flip through these little pages without really thinking about it, the impression that you get is, for a long time China knew about something, they just didn't do anything, and then just spread and spread and spread, and God, why did they just let it spread? And they were all in their churches spreading it to each other. That's so rough. But eventually the United States came in and led the charge, and then finally China fell in line, which is not what happened. Just another sloppy, ridiculous little piece of garbage made by the New York Times, who has really just turned into a rag mag. I mean, it's unfortunate because I'm sure there's some nice people there, but they are really, really bad at understanding China, or they're really, really good at making propaganda. But either way, I'm not going to let them get away with this type of stuff anymore. So sorry, NYT. Well, I've got a lot of other videos to make, and thanks for the support, everybody. Keep sharing this type of stuff. We can't let them get away with this. It's just ridiculous. There's so many people out there just barfing out these non-facts, random, weird propaganda types of films. And to see the New York Times do this yet again is just disgusting. I mean, give me a break. Thanks, everybody. 大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. Today I want to explore the question, should we be calling COVID-19 the Chinese virus? Bill Maher is a political commentator slash comedian who's been famous for a long time. I've never really been a huge fan of his, but he's said a lot of pretty interesting things and he's kind of funny. So let's take a look at what Bill Maher has to say.
You can't yell at someone for breaking a rule you just made up.
The WHO back in 2015 released guidance on how to name diseases and viruses, basically saying don't name it after any people, place, or country or anything like that because it does stigmatize those things. Just name it something scientific that people can say. So this isn't a new rule. This is, I guess 5 years ago, maybe that's new. I don't know.
Scientists have been naming diseases after the places they came from for a very long time.
So here's where the fun begins. First, Bill Maher suggests that if something has been happening for a long time, it is therefore okay and acceptable, which is completely ridiculous. So let's hear some examples from Bill on diseases that were named where they came from.
Zika is from the Zika forest.
Right off the bat, he starts with the Zika virus, which is named after a forest. And the Zika forest is in Uganda. Didn't know that? Don't you think that's interesting? Why didn't you know where it was? So are you saying we should change the Zika virus to Uganda virus? This is not the name of a people or a country. This is the name of a forest that no one knows where it is.
Ebola from the Ebola River.
Ebola from the Ebola River. Pop quiz. Where's the Ebola River? You do realize that Ebola is also not a country or a city or a people, right? The reason that they named this virus after a river is very interesting. They didn't find the virus at the Ebola River, nor did the outbreak start at the Ebola River. They named it after that river specifically because they didn't want to stigmatize the people of the town where they found the virus. This is actually defeating your point.
Hantavirus, the Hantan River.
And where's the Hantan River, Bill? No normal human knows where the Hantan River is. It's in South Korea. So are you saying we should call this the South Korea virus, or what are you talking about?
There's the West Nile virus.
Because the outbreak started in Uganda, we should also call this one the Uganda virus. Is that what you're saying? How many Uganda viruses do you want?
Guinea worm.
And now you're talking about the guinea worm, but the guinea worm was described in Egypt. So that should be an Egyptian worm. So why is it called the guinea worm? Well, because it was first identified in the Guinea coast. So are you changing it now so that we shouldn't name diseases and worms after where they're from, but where they were identified?
Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Oh, you mean the United States fever, right?
The Spanish flu.
The Spanish flu. I thought we were naming things after where they came from. The leading theory on where the Spanish flu came from is the United States. So do you mean the United States flu? No, I'm sorry. You're talking about where they were first identified. So the Spanish flu, you should be calling the United Kingdom flu. Why are you calling this the Spanish flu, Bill? You don't like Spanish people or something?
MERS stands for Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome.
So weird that you had to explain what MERS stood for, Bill. It's almost like nobody knows that. And again, it started in Saudi Arabia and it was identified in the Netherlands. So should we call this Merzerlands? Saudi Merzia? No, wait. Saudi Arabia Respiratory Syndrome. Or SARS for short. There's nothing confusing about that at all, right?
So why should China get a pass?
It shouldn't. China should not get a pass. Literally every single example you've shown us doesn't support the concept of naming a disease after a country because that's where it came from. You do realize that, right? This disease and every disease from 2015 on should be named in accordance with the guidelines. In fact, we should probably rename a lot of these old ones that are confusing as hell because people like you think that the guinea worm is from Guinea. And the thing is, even if those were examples of diseases being named after a country and a people, that still doesn't mean we should break protocol to keep doing it for no reason.
Congressman Ted Lieu tweeted, "The virus is not constrained by country or race, be just as stupid to call it the Milan virus. No, that would be way stupider because it didn't come from Milan.
That would be so stupid, Bill. That'd be like calling the United States Kansas flu the Spanish flu, or the Egyptian worm the guinea worm. What kind of an idiot would do that? I guess somebody who just hires interns to do their research for them, huh? What an idiot.
And if it did, I guarantee we'd be calling it the Milan virus.
You guarantee that, do you? Well, none of the examples you've given have shown any evidence that that's the case. None of them were a city where the virus had originated. Zero. So what are you even talking about, Bill? Do you even listen to yourself?
Can't we even have a pandemic without getting offended?
Why are they getting offended? I don't know. Why are you going out of your way to do this? Why are you putting so much energy into changing a normal word into something different that stigmatizes people when you have yet to show any precedence? And even if there was precedence, the guidelines have changed. And you have yet to show any reason to do so other than you apparently don't like Chinese people.
When they named Lyme disease after a town in Connecticut, the locals didn't get all ticked off.
Do you mean the Native American disease? Because Lyme disease, as you're calling it, has been around way longer than the United States. I'm really looking forward to your statement on how much you really want to get rid of the Native American disease. And I just love how you squeezed in that little ridiculous fallacy that, well, these people weren't offended by something, according to me, and so nobody can be offended by that thing. Are you just the product of nobody questioning you for 30 years or what, dude?
It scares me that there are people out there who would rather die from the virus than call it by the wrong name.
What? What are you talking about? Who is out there that would rather die from a virus than call it the wrong name? Do you not have anyone that checks what you're writing down? This is the most ridiculous thing I've probably ever heard. If you call COVID-19 COVID-19, you'll die? Is that what you're saying here? Or is this real? What the f*** are you talking about?
This isn't about vilifying a culture.
You're going out of your way to change the medical community's name for a disease to reflect people and a culture for unknown reasons based on examples of diseases that don't do that. And then you're saying, but it's not to vilify them. Then why are you doing it?
It's about facts.
Facts. Okay, finally, you're speaking my language. Here's some facts for you, Bill. The name of the disease is COVID-19. It isn't called the China virus. Here's another fact. Going out of your way to intentionally call COVID-19 one of those types of names needs a motivation. You're doing something out of the ordinary, so why are you doing it? Another fact is, very few, if any of those motivations are peaceful. Another fact, your examples defeat your argument. I mean, I'm blown away by how stupid this video is. And all the reports that I've seen about it, either they attack him as some racist or they just support him and say, he's right. And none of them seem to notice how absolutely stupid this video is. Here's another fact. Chinese people are affected by stigmatizations. Here's another fact. Nobody is affected by calling a disease its proper name. Do you care about any of these facts? I mean, you're the one who brought up facts. I assume you know what they are, right?
The wet markets in China are already starting to reopen. It's not racist to point out that eating bats is batshit crazy.
I'm sorry, do you care about facts or not, Bill? Because, I mean, other than the fact that we know some Americans eat bats, there are zero facts that prove that this outbreak has anything to do with eating bats. It's not a fact that eating bats is common in Wuhan. It's not a fact that bats were sold at the Huanan market. Did you even know that? It's not a fact that any of the bat videos that you've seen online have anything to do with this outbreak. The most popular one wasn't even in China. The only fact that I hear is that you're rambling about facts without having any.
What if people hear Chinese virus and blame China? The answer is we should blame China, not Chinese Americans.
Oh, not Chinese Americans, just Chinese people. They should be blamed for the virus. Do you hear yourself, Bill? Because you sound extremely hawkish right now. I mean, you do realize that by your logic, we should be blaming the United States for AIDS, right? No? Why? It's completely logically consistent with what you just said. So what should we do about that, Bill? What should we do to American citizens because of AIDS? I mean, other than renaming it the United States. How should we punish them? I mean, not Americans in China, obviously.
We can't stop telling the truth because racists get the wrong idea. There are always going to be idiots out there who want to indulge their prejudices.
You can talk about facts. You can say, hey, COVID-19 came from China. No one cares. No one's complaining about that. But when you go out of your way to change that away from facts to what you consider true, which is that we should be blaming Chinese people, but not American Chinese. And by the way, Chinese Americans are just called Americans, unless you're talking about race. You understand that, right? If you say Chinese American, you're talking about an American citizen who is of a Chinese ethnicity. What you've just said is we should blame everyone of a certain race unless they're our citizens. Maybe that's not what you meant, but that's what you just said.
We can't afford the luxury anymore of non-judginess towards a country with habits that kill millions of people everywhere, because this isn't the first time.
What? Okay, let's get some millions of people examples. I want to see these millions of people that were killed.
SARS came from China.
Oh my God, SARS. What was that? 100 million? 200 million? Oh, it wasn't even 1,000. Okay, well, we've got a long way to go, but I'm looking forward to the rest of these millions. The next number is definitely going to have at least 100 million, right?
And the bird flu.
The bird flu? The bird flu from Italy that broke out in the United Kingdom?
And the Hong Kong flu.
Again, Hong Kong was part of the United Kingdom when that happened. I thought we were naming this after the countries that something originated in. That was the United Kingdom.
The Asian flu. Viruses come from China like...
I'm sorry, dude, what happened to the millions of people? Huh? You just said millions of people, dude. What am I missing? And you just move right past it. Why is no one calling this guy on his BS?
If they were selling nuclear suitcases at these wet markets, would we be so non-judgmental? And isn't this pretty close to what they are selling?
You know what, dude? I give up. Go ahead, call it the Chinese virus. All I ask is that we just use the same naming scheme for all diseases, okay? So let's just name every disease to the country that we first knew about it, or first case, or whatever we can find about it, okay? And we're gonna have to start renaming a lot of diseases, like Alzheimer's becomes Greasheimer's, anthrax becomes Franzthrax, botulism becomes Germanachulism, cholera becomes Indiaolera, and you got me, German measles stays German measles. So there's one, Bill. We can name gonorrhea Chinaria. The United States even loses one. The California Valley fever, we can just start calling that Argentever. Group A streptococcal infection will become United States infection, or United States cock infection, whatever you want. Chlamydia becomes Russia-media, rabies becomes Iraqis, Marburg virus becomes yet another Uganda virus, syphilis becomes Italyphilus, tetanus, Germanius, salmonella becomes Spainanella, Zika becomes Ugandica, toxic shock syndrome becomes toxic United States syndrome, sickle cell disease, sickle cell United States disease, norovirus becomes Denmark virus. Let's go with the other standard. Let's name things after where the virus was identified. That makes perfect sense. So Ebola becomes Democratic Republic of the Congobola, German measles becomes United Steezels, chlamydia becomes Portugalidia, bubonic plague becomes the United Bubonic Kingdom of Plague. As we talked about, AIDS becomes United States, H1N1 becomes the United States flu, Japanese encephalitis becomes United Kingdom phlitis, Lou Gehrig's disease becomes United States disease, Lyme disease, United States disease. I mean, hopefully you're not getting lost here. Salmonella, United States Ella. SARS then becomes Vietnars. Smallpox becomes United Kingpox. Typhoid fever becomes Germanoid fever. I mean, do you see any problems with this, Bill? Is this sounding good to you? And did you notice, Bill, only one of these, one that I could find, was actually named after the place that it was found. One. So your weird argument as to why you should change protocol and deliberately go out of your way to stigmatize an entire people while saying that you're not trying to do that, your entire argument is based on non-facts. I mean, why should any of these countries get a break, Bill? Or you know what? Here's an amazing idea, Bill. Instead of going through this huge, confusing process of trying to identify a way to attach these diseases to people, I don't know, why don't we just have this group of people who are experts in something who can come up with a way to not stigmatize others and also have a name for diseases? It shall be an organization of the Earth Health. OEH. No. Who could do that, Bill? Who could we get to do that? I wonder WHO could do that for us, Bill. I mean, if only somebody had given us some advice 5 fucking years ago on how to deal with this, we wouldn't all be talking about why you're trying so hard to attach diseases to people. Well, I don't know, Bill. Email me if you get any ideas on WHO can help us with this. Until then, thanks everybody. 谢谢。